Hello believers, thanks for joining me for this audio encounter. This is a podcast where we speak to creative minds about what they like, how they think, and how cult TV has shaped them. That's not the sound of me skirting around a strange crime scene in a Maryland wood. I'm out in a park in Leith, near where I live. Today we have a frank and free-ranging chat with the writer, comedy promoter, former grocery-based comedian and all-round good Welsh egg, Henry Widdicombe. Henry runs the comedy promotions and production company Little Wonder and is the founder of the excellent Machynlleth and Aberystwyth comedy festivals. You'll notice I tried really hard there to pronounce Machynlleth correctly and not say Machynlleth like I did about 5 years ago on stage in front of about 200 people from the town. So apologies to them then and now. Hopefully got that correct this time. Henry and I talk about stand-up comedy addiction, facilitating the creativity of others, channeling major life events into something positive, and we also get into chatting about Season 1, Episode 1 of The X-Files, which is handily titled Pilot. You'll come to realise with this podcast that neither myself nor many of the guests really describe themselves as X-Files experts, but we have a shared fondness for the show, and when I saw it pop up on a popular UK free streaming service, I thought now would be a perfect opportunity to revisit the show, see how well it's aged, and follow Mulder and Scully on their journey once again. So welcome along. If you enjoy the show, do drop us a line at believemepod@gmail.com. and like and subscribe and all that game. Don't write out nasty though, there's enough of that in the world. I know what the limitations are at the moment of this podcast. I'm not Jeremy Paxman, but I hope you get something out of this chat. So without further ado, here's Henry. You're very deep.
Very deep.
Yeah, it sounds great, but I've not spoken to you for a while, so maybe your voice has deepened and the...
Well, I think it's my radio voice.
It's really soothing. It's lovely.
Yeah, I've realised when I do the music show, I don't want to be like pick of the pops. It's just like full, take all the energy out of it. Just, yeah.
That's nice. How are you, first off?
I'm okay, I think. Not to get straight into it, I think it's a funny time of life, isn't it? Sort of 40s.
Because how old are you now?
44.
Right.
And some major life changes in the last few years. So just sort of figuring those out, but also just having a lot more. I don't know. It's weird. I think I had more confidence to actually do stuff in my 20s, but I'm more confident of knowing myself now. So I think I know myself a lot better, but maybe I'm not as plucky as when we first met, where I was like, I'm just going to do this and see if I can get away with it. I feel like I've built up so much steam from what I did that that's on my side in a sense, in that like the company that I've run and like will carry me along if I'm not necessarily feeling it for any given period. But I think I have a very complex relationship with creativity and what I count as being creative and what I don't count as being creative, and sort of allow myself to like celebrate one thing but completely disregard others.
I'm always kind of impressed by the amount of hats you wear. What does a usual day look like for you? Who are you working with, and what kind of projects are you juggling at any one time?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting now is that like when we got into comedy and when we decided to do this, like it was very much one man operation. It was, I'm going to do this. It was driven by me, and it was everything from like the big picture stuff to setting up a microphone in a room, and like it was just one person. And I think now it feels very weird in that like that was my escape from a job I wasn't necessarily feeling satisfied in. It was an office job, and it was like, do I really want to be doing this with my life? And now I look at my job and it's not that far away from that office job. You know, it's like it's the same stuff. It's people management, it's budgets, it's reports, it's spreadsheets, but in an industry that I loved. So it's quite I would say, like, I think I've got 8 staff now. So, like, well, I shouldn't say 8 staff. There are 8 employees for Little Wonder.
Yeah.
And so there's like a tours department, which I have kind of very little to do with aside from a sort of big picture. What's the direction? So there's departments in my company that I don't really have a day-to-day role within, you know, which feels lovely in one respect. It feels amazing in one respect, but also can feel quite weird to have been a control freak essentially and sort of wanted to control every element of the company, to now be going, I trust these people implicitly to deliver what I wanted this to be. It's amazing that, like, when you find the right people in those roles, it's incredible because you're just like, yeah, they get it, and I don't need to think about this. And I think the way I describe it now is Little Wonder, the company, I wanted it to be a company that from someone's first 5 minutes, they have right through to like the end game of their career, they have the ability to work with us. So they can come to the company and get a gig for us at one of our monthly gigs to do like an open spot or whatever. And then by the time they're doing 20s, we're still working with them as an opening 20 or giving them their first festival gig at Green Man, or when they do their first hours, they bring it to Mac. A lot of acts do their first ever hour at Mac. And like,
Yeah.
and then we can sort of, if they've got podcast ideas or if we've got radio shows they might be able to jump on, or and then through to TV. And so it's just, we wanted to build this company that can key into an artist's journey that whole way through. And I think we are that. But I think in terms of me, yeah, I can be across any part of the company, but normally in much more of a sort of making sure everything's okay, giving the staff the confidence to sort of run with their decisions and go, yep, this is exactly the way we should be going with this project. And I think in reality, the company works best when I'm checking in with the staff, checking in with the artists, big picture thinking. But it's I love it when I get to sort of be on the shop floor again. Like, I had to stand in and do some podcast recording the other week, and I had a ball. You know, I had a day just out recording 2 comedians titting about in a haunted mansion, and it was just like, yeah, I'm so lucky that this is my job.
At what point did Little Wonder kind of come into your head then? Did you think, did you just feel like there was a gap in the market for something like that around where you lived, and you felt it wasn't being catered for the comedians that you want to see and wanted to put on? And did it just grow organically from that point?
Looking back, I think it grew out of anger and frustration, which is good because it's like this incredibly positive thing has come about through my sort of concern that I wasn't going to have a home in comedy. I wasn't going to have a place. Like, I mean, I wasn't going to move to London. I was, 28 at the time. Little Wonder was founded when I was 30, but I was running gigs for a couple of years as a sole trader before that. So I was sort of 28. I knew I couldn't move to London because I sort of had a life that I wasn't going to sort of stop. And then I couldn't really go to Edinburgh because I couldn't really justify a month away, and I couldn't justify the cost. And then again, my career was beginning. I mean, it was a career. Let's call it what it is. Like, I was reaching the point where I was getting paid work at weekend gigs, and it was like, sometimes they'd go very well, but sometimes they would go so badly. And I'd be sat in a hotel room on my own thinking, is this what I want? Is this why I got into comedy? Like, and so I couldn't see a path. Like, the weekend club gig path, I didn't really want to do. Edinburgh, where I could be a show comic, which is kind of what I wanted to do, felt close to me again, because it just felt like, well, I can't justify 10 grand and 30 days to go to this thing. And so it was sort of, I started to just build the world I wanted around me, and that like it was kind of like, well, I'm not going to get. I could see all my peers doing all of this other stuff, and I didn't want to be left behind, essentially. And so I started to build it around me in a way that I could still participate. So um, it's why I ran gigs, and then it's why I started Machynlleth, because I didn't get on with Edinburgh at all. So in 2008, I had a really I didn't even I think I went for 2 weeks, if that, and just had an incredibly bad reaction to it. Just felt it was all wrong, even though I was just like, I'd been doing stand-up 10 months or something stupid like that, you know. But I was there and I was going,
Was that you on your own doing an hour then, or was it a part of a package?
no. So it was me, Ellis James, Matt Price, and Josh, and me and Josh shared it. So basically, it was gonna be an act called Wes Packer. So it's going to be Ellis, Matt Price, and Wes Packer, and then Wes Packer didn't go. And Ellis just approached me and said, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "I can't go for a month."
Yeah.
And it was 2008, so no one knew who Josh was. So I was like, my brother's pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
do you wanna? We could share it. So I did the first bit, and Josh did the second. Um, I think I went home a few days early because, like, as predicted, like my relationship was absolutely melting down. But also I was like, I was enjoying the performance element of Edinburgh, but hating every other aspect. I've got like these sort of youthful diaries from me having a breakdown in Brooks Bar, essentially, of just like looking at the way everyone was chasing attention and just going, "Oh God, is this it? Is
Yeah.
this what we're all doing?" And just like, yeah, I started to build that around me. And then I think I also sort of found that the high that I got from bringing a load of people together to have a great time, whether it just be like a Friday night gig or whether it's the festival or whatever, felt like such a healthier high than the high I got from driving 4 hours to Manchester, performing for 20 minutes, feeling like a golden god, but then having a breakdown on the way home going, why do you need to show off to these strangers? Like what is driving you to do? I loved it, you know, I loved showing off, but it didn't sit comfortably with me that I was like, you're just proving to them that you're funny. These people that you don't know. So why are you constantly driven to just prove that you're the smartest person in the room, basically, which is I think what I was driven by.
Yeah, and if you it's and you know that's if you're having a good gig, you know.
Yeah.
I worked it out as sort of, for me, 1 in 14 gigs was an absolute blinder. You know,
Yeah.
it was like I was almost being carried out, and it was like everything had aligned cosmically, and then the other 13 were just totally soul destroying. And I just thought, but it was enough to cling on to. That 1 in 14 gig was enough to cling on to think, right, this maybe it's, I just need to find the audience, you know. I just need to find this, or this audience needs to just follow me around.
I remember that gig in Treorchy where you absolutely blew. So you're in the middle of nowhere in Wales in this, and you just blew minds. And like, I think I've always thought about you in like, I thought I was alternative, but like you were right on the edges of like when I used to watch you, I'd often be thinking like he's really like you really pushed it to areas that you would fail essentially. Like, but you'd watch it and you go, Christ, if you figure this out, like if you figure out just how to cross that line into like it felt like you were really pushing the limits of what might be achievable on stage, and that might be over egging it, but like that's what it felt like at the time. Of like, like with my set, it was alternative, but it was like it was pretty safe. You know, it was you could point to all of the points where it's like that's the joke, that's the joke, that's the joke, and that's not to say that you didn't have that.
Yeah, I when I watch your sets, I was I was laughing. The primary goal was, he's making everybody laugh here, and I guess I went into it because I don't know if this is my problem with doing stand up was I was never really that interested in really making people laugh, you know.
Yeah.
Which is a problem, isn't it? It was almost like this is the most direct form of communication. On, you know, it's just I don't need anybody else, just me. Get up there and communicate an idea. And you know, I'd come to it having watched, you know, Kim Noble or like performance art and hanging around with a load of fine artists in uni and like, you know, looking up to people like Lee Bowery and people like that. So it wasn't. Yeah, I approached it wrong, but that's very kind of you to say that. That gig.
Well, I don't think you do. I don't think you did approach it wrong. I think there isn't a wrong or a right approach. I think, like you said, like it's the one art form that no one dabbles in what you're doing. Like you have complete control over what you do up there and what you don't do up there. And yeah, if you want to measure success by how many people in that room laughed or not, I mean, I guess that's a fair way to measure comedy. But even so, like it doesn't stop you going up and doing whatever the hell you like and seeing how it turns out. And I think exactly that when it works, like yeah, that Triorchi gig, like you said, it's like you were carried out. You just, and I think you're an opening 20 as well, ahead of Pappy's maybe, or I don't know, but like you got up there with this little speaker and just did that join me start where you just sort of like raised your hands in the air going join me.
And this is, I'm glad you remember all this because this is, it feels like a sort of dream, you know, a lot of this. I really remember the gig you put on, and I drove up with Mike Wozniak, and I remember that was one of the first gigs I'd done.
Right.
I remember like David Trent came to see a show at Mac. I don't know which show it was I was doing at Mac. And afterwards I said, "Oh, what do you think, David?" I said, "Do you think I should put some more jokes in?" And he said, "Only if you want it to be more funny."
Yeah.
I enjoyed that sort of. I always enjoy David's thoughts and everything, but I think he sort of hit the nail on the head. So, I mean, do you? At what point? I guess you're a bit like me that you didn't. I never feel like I stopped. You know, maybe I'd stopped gigging, but I don't feel. And another thing that David said is like, just don't tell people you've stopped. Don't do a big thing where you go on Chortle or you go on Twitter and go, I am quitting comedy forever. I'm not doing it. I'm never, you know, I'm never coming back. And you see people write these blog pieces like, you don't need to do that. It's just like looking for attention. But did you? I mean, was there a point where you went, I'm just going to move into this new aspect of my life now, like you say, because I'm finding joy and satisfaction in that aspect rather than the performing. Do you remember that point?
So I think, yeah, I do remember that point, but I think about stopping, I think it's a really interesting thing. I think there's a huge amount of parallels. I might be talking out my ass, but I think there's a huge amount of parallels between like addiction and what I got from stand up. And before that, when I was a teenager, and this sounds very sort of cheesy, but like I used to surf as a teenager and I got the same thing from there, that I was just absolutely like besotted with it. And I don't think I'll ever consider myself as not a stand-up comedian. I think it is like, it's not, this sounds overblown because like obviously alcoholism is a massive problem, and like, but it's like, I feel like a recovering stand-up. I'm never going to not be a stand-up. Like it's something that is all, and because it's so accessible as well, I always feel like it's so close that I could just go and do it again if I wanted to. And like, because there are no barriers to it. Like I could get a gig this week if I wanted to and go and do it, you know, and like, so, I mean, it'd be awful, but like I could, you know, that's the level, that's the entry level. The entry level to stand up is asking for a gig, you know.
Yeah.
But no, it was pretty, I think it's a weird one. I think my life as I knew it felt like it was going to fall apart if I carried on doing stand up.
Right.
And that was external forces. And so I had this big, long, drawn out period as when I was leaving stand up, you know, I sort of I think I probably decided sometime in like 2010 that it wasn't for me, and it took me till 2015 to actually go, I'm done, you know. But I think to get out of it, and this is again why I sort of view it as like there are parallels with, I had to really convince myself I didn't like it to stop doing it. I had to like forcefully convince myself that and like I did a good job on myself, you know. It was a real sort of telling myself a lie that then afterwards I sort of, I mean, David's a good, I don't want to put words in David's mouth, but I don't think David really likes being around comedy now, David Trent. And it is because it rumbles on without you, and it is such a bubble that like, but I used to find when I did it exactly that if you're in this constant race where it's like, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep, what I found was if you stop doing it for a couple of months and then went back to it, the only person that realized you weren't doing it, the only person that knew you weren't doing it was you.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
everyone else was like, oh, you must be 2 months better. You must be 2 months further down the line. You're like, well, I haven't gigged for 8 weeks, but like, sure. If
Yes.
that's what we're
Right.
doing, then yeah, I have. And like, so it's quite interesting because you see hundreds of people, but maybe once a year. And and everyone's filling in the same facts about you in their heads when you're a part of like, they're probably gigging all the time, they're probably working on really great stuff, they're
Right.
probably getting better with every gig. And like, because it's just an industry riddled with paranoia, thanks to the industry saying you have to keep going and you have to keep performing, and it's all about stage time. And it took me a long time to, weirdly, there's a whole period sort of post 2015 where I ran sort of, let's call it the UK's sort of premier alternative comedy festival. And I didn't really engage in comedy for about 3 years.
Right.
And like, and so it was just like, I was running on the back of sort of the knowledge that I had, but I wasn't going to see shows. I wasn't keeping abreast of stuff. Or maybe again, maybe that was just my paranoia that I wasn't as engaged as I was, or like I can never be as engaged as what I was when I did stand up, because you're out there seeing acts every day, not every day, but you know what I mean? Like every gig you're seeing people and you're going, oh, they're good or they're bad, or not bad. No one's bad, but like, well, they are bad, but like,
Yeah.
objectively,
The sort of people you'd want to
yeah.
have on. Yeah.
So when I did my hour show, I knew that was like the last sort of thing I was going to do. And it was more proving to myself that I could have done it than anything else. I had no objectives to take it to Edinburgh. I had no objectives to tour it. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could write an hour, self-contained hour that felt funny, that had a through line. And like, so that was 2014, 2015. I got Arts Council funding, which felt nice because it was like legitimizing it sort of. And yeah, but again, it had this sort of with it, like, so the first one I did, I sort of sold out a chapter. Then I did like Invisible Dot, I can't remember where else I did it. I did about 8 times. And then the last one I did was, there was some Edinburgh previews and someone pulled out, and I was like, oh, I'll just do I need to replace it. I'll just do the show again.
Yeah.
And like about 8 people came, and I did it to pretty much, not even pretty much. I did it to an hour of pure silence. And like,
yeah.
and that was like my sort of way, sort of goodbye to stand up. And it was, I used to find the deaths quite interesting because you're in your head and you're really analyzing what's going on, and like the words are coming out your mouth, but really you're on autopilot and you're just going, wow, this is interesting. Okay, let's see
Yeah.
where this goes. And like, in those 8 people was Mike Wozniak, because he was doing a preview. There was friend of my ex-wife's brother, so like 10 years below, so probably like 20 years old, probably didn't really know stand up much, but I knew this person, and they've just had to sit there for an hour in silence. Another friend of mine from university was there, Chris Corcoran. I don't know if you remember him,
The
but
name
he
rings
was
a bell. Yeah.
yeah, he's like a Welsh act. He was a Welsh act, and like So it was just this cross section of like the worst people that I could have and no one else. Like
Yeah.
it was just an hour of like the first cue didn't fire. And I had to sort it out. And it was almost like from that moment on, that
Yeah.
that was it. It was done. And I remember thinking in my head, like, what I'd love to do is just explain to these people that it's absolutely fine that this is happening, that I don't mind that no one's laughing. But there's no way of doing that. There's no way of going, look, guys, don't worry. I'm not dying inside because of this.
Yeah.
I'm actually finding it quite an interesting social experiment. But yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny.
it's a fitting way to go out, I think.
I was just looking back on the last text I got from you, and that was about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. But you said, "Oh, sorry, mate. If you don't mind me saying," you said, "Oh, I've just had a breakdown," and I was like, "Oh, fucking hell," because I've not spoken to you for so long, and I didn't know
Yeah.
what was it like going through that, and how did that sort of manifest itself. If you don't mind talking about that.
I don't know when that would have been because there was a big period of let's sort of start in sort of 2015 and move on from there. In that, like, I started to focus on the business, building the business, which was, I mean, I need to be thankful for the fact that like I get to do this. I've worked extremely hard to build this thing. Sometimes I feel like it's like the hardest thing I've ever done. It's incredibly stressful, um, but I have to be aware that I've built something that has like made people, a lot of acts feel like they've got a home in comedy.
Mm.
Done exactly what I wanted it to, really, which is be like this artist focused organization that sort of does things in a way that I agree with. But it's not been without its stresses. And I think obviously the pandemic, there was a sort of 9-month period where we didn't really know whether everything was going to disappear, like we're going to lose everything. So from
Mm.
the start of sort of when those new stories started to come, I was like, well, that's this year's Mac done. And like, we had to pull that. And then I essentially became a lobbyist, government lobbyist. And I was in all sorts of meetings lobbying for like comedy and like lobbying for, and then I was involved in the setup of Live Comedy Association, which was trying to get comedy a voice in the pandemic.
Mm.
Because we suddenly felt completely isolated as an industry of like, oh, there's no one talking about us. Like music has bodies, theatre has bodies, and comedy is just this wild west with no unified voice. And so it's tough, But like
Yeah.
we did get cultural recovery grant support, which absolutely saved us, and that's almost when I had a sort of not. I mean, I hate to use the word breakdown because you never know whether what you've gone through is extreme or mild
Mm.
or whatever. But I certainly felt like collapse of it. You know how it often comes after? Like I held it together right to the moment where we got the recovery money.
Right.
And then when that came in, I just sort of like, yeah, had a full sort of just like, oh my God, we made it. And then following that, in the, well, about 4 months later, my marriage broke down. Spent sort of 6 months trying to save the marriage, but sort of dawning on me that I wasn't going to be able to. And like this whole thing of like, I'd been in that relationship since I was 19 and I'd sort of fully committed to it. And suddenly there was sort of this period where my whole life felt like it was built on shifting sands. And it was like, oh, wow, like the business might not make it. The relationship that I built my whole life around and based decisions on of like quitting stand up or not moving to London to follow stand up or like all of these big sort of decisions where I'd gone, no, I've committed to this person. This is what I'm doing. I mean, it was hard, a very sort of bitter pill to swallow. But I think the one sort of salvation in that was I did have this business and I did have this. So it wasn't like I could look at it and go, oh, you've wasted all that time, which I think you can do at a breakdown of a relationship.
Mm.
Um, especially in the way that mine broke down. It was like, it felt like I'd been sold a pup, really. But I had this thing that I'd built, and sort of it was the one anchoring point that I could fix onto and go, this is a solid thing. This is solid. So yeah, it's been an interesting period. I think I've definitely used whatever energy I've got and thrown that into the business where I can. I think I'm very lucky that the business was employing a lot of people by this time, and it can handle days where I've not got the energy, and it can handle days where I'm absolutely like flying, and that's the way I've got used to the cycle of my body of like, hopefully I can get back to some kind of more normal routine. But I think through a lot of counseling and things like that, I've just realized that actually right now there are days that I just have to go, you can't do this. And there are days where I go, you can smash through that entire list that's been sat on your phone for 2 weeks or whatever, and feel like you've got a clear desk. And so I think the way I work has changed.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, do you find that because the business is so multifaceted that do you have to be a different person for every aspect of so if you've got your promoter hat on?
No, I think I'm very good at turning it on, no matter how I feel on any given day. If I need to turn up and turn it on and be present in a work capacity, I think it's the one thing that I'm incredibly good at. I think always have been as well, of like, I can be a wreck behind the scenes and then deliver what I need to deliver. And I think as time's gone on, it's a weird one. I've become much more a person that gives people other people confidence, gives other people authority, and it feels very odd, but it's like often it's my presence that is the thing that can bring a project sort of cohesion and like and just make things feel in control and feel like, obviously I'm doing the work behind the scenes to make sure that that's the case, but it's like it can often feel quite odd that a lot of the people are doing the actual work these days, and my role is very much to make people feel comfortable and appreciated and like they're doing the right thing, give people confidence. And I think I've always been very good at that. I think I've always been good at reading situations, reading personalities, understanding where the love is needed of like, and I think that's sort of a natural state for me, and something I feel very comfortable being in. I think you mentioned the different states. I kind of don't. So I don't really. This is where I was talking about earlier, is that I don't really view my job as creative, which is absurd, really. But I view myself as an enabler, and like for other people at the moment, like that by creating Little Wonder, what I've done is chosen to lift other people up and sort of enable their creative ambitions. And obviously there's creativity in every aspect of my job at Little Wonder, but I don't give myself any credit for that at all. And I still have the same creative desires that I always had, of like wanting to write, wanting to come up with things that are my own. And I think what I've found incredibly difficult, and it could be just an excuse for not doing it, but like finding that stress-free space to create has been incredibly difficult over the last 10-15 years, of like being able to switch off from the day-to-day stress of running a business and go, you're going to play today, and you're just going to, and it's fine. You're going to take 6 hours and you're just going to, or even 1 hour, you're going to switch off from all of these things that you're worried about, and you're just going to let your mind play, and that I've found very difficult. The times when I've managed it are like when I've enrolled on courses or things like that, and it's really given me a reason to be creative and given me that
Right.
structure. But it's interesting in that we did a topical panel show for Radio Wales last year. We have got 4 episodes, and we're hoping to get more. And it's a new show, and we're really proud of it. And like, we're bringing new writers through the writers' room and things like that. And as like I think I'm the exec producer on it rather than producer, but no, I am a producer on it. I still don't really know who does what. But
I think exec producer put some money into figured it out anyway.
Yeah. So, but I'm in the writers' rooms, and like, I haven't written topical for 15 years, and like, but I was just like, I can do this. Like, I can write jokes on this thing, and I just started like putting jokes in and getting them on, and which is odd to be like the producer and go. It's not like saying this joke definitely. I was very humble about my joke. I just plop them in the mix and see what happened. But like, I'd get a couple of jokes on each episode, and I'd give myself so much credit and celebrate it so much. Just a couple of jokes on a Radio Wales topical panel show, like, that was far more important to me than running all of the stuff that Little Wonder does, which is absolutely absurd when I look at it like that. Of like, what is going on in my psyche that hearing something I wrote read out in a room and hearing an audience laugh gets me off so much more than running a highly successful festival that people really love.
Yeah. I mean, that is that recovering stand-up, isn't it? Aspect, I guess, that's always there. That would be like, look, you can come on back to it. But no, that's nice. It's good to hear you talk through that, because the warmth that you convey, I think, is like, can't be underestimated. And having you on a project, and I'm sure every actor you work with will say the same thing, is it brings it feels steady and infused at the same time, and that is a wonderful headspace for a performer to be in and to create from. I imagine everybody would say that. So
there are so many people that want to interfere with an artist's creative process, right? And I'm not saying the artist is always right, but they're the ones with the vision. They're the ones that know what they want it to be. And like, it's about offering advice when it's wanted, but at the same time, it's about doing everything you can to enable the artist to deliver what they want, whether that is going to be a like smash hit or absolutely rubbish. It's about supporting that artist at that. If you believe in that artist to go, we want to work with you, you then have to back that up by, like, in my eyes, not changing what they want to do, but supporting what they want to do to get it to as close to what they want it to be as possible. Because I don't know, I always felt like the stuff that I always liked and the stuff that I still like is often the stuff that you feel has been left alone as much as possible, that has sort of developed in a shadow somewhere without masses of interference from people that aren't artists, that aren't performers, that don't have a natural instinct of what makes something funny or not.
who's doing that for you at the minute then? Who have you seen and you've felt excited by, and you felt like you want to work with if you're not working with them at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious one, I think, and it's come from my mate Sam. So someone I employ called Sam Roberts, he's got a keener eye for stuff that I like than I do, so he'll often send stuff through to me. But he turned me on to Joe Pera, who I think is it's an American act who it's the first time in a long time that I've just gone, oh yeah, no, this is for me. I mean, right now, like I know he's ballooned now because of Taskmaster, but like the last few years, Sam Campbell's just been head and shoulders above for me. In that, like, I went to see him I guess it would have been COVID in Edinburgh, and it was in the Monkey Barrel downstairs.
Mm.
And Nish actually, it was like at midnight, and Nish was like, "You got to see this guy." And we went down, and it's one of the best things I've ever seen. That stupidity, like I've always loved like the stupidity and not understanding why I'm laughing. I think what's really interesting at the moment is like in this country, we've almost given up on sketch in terms of broadcasters and commissioning. And I thought that Netflix thing, it was like 15-minute episodes, and it was a Saturday Night Live guy. I thought it was really good. I think you were leaving or something like that. Sorry.
Oh, I think it's Tim Robinson.
Yeah.
Yes, that is because when I asked you the question, I was trying to think of the stuff that I've seen and felt, excited by as well. And that is it. Yeah, that is like a totally different. Where's this mind come from?
Yeah.
And it's like it's an immediately very quotable as well. But
yeah, I think it's a real mistrick by this country that we're absolutely neglecting and have done for years. The amount of times I've heard in commissioning meetings, we're not looking for sketch right now, and like to the point where I want to make a show called "We're Not Looking for Sketch Right Now," and like just like somehow finance a load of the best sort of sketch writers and comedians to come up with this stuff, and like and even when it is like, I don't want to talk specifically about programs and stuff because it sounds like I'm knocking them, but I think there's that ITV show with is it the stand-up sketch show or something it's called, and like it's
the sort of format of that is like they do mostly stand up and then they go off and do a little hidden camera bit.
It's their stand-up, but then it's filmed as supposedly what a sketch is, but it's not a sketch. It's just them filming the stand-up, and it's like, if you know what I mean, just filming the story of the stand-up, and so that's not sketch, that's not. And I just think like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not a full sketch head, but yeah, I think the focus is on stand-up, right? And there's a bunch of people who are brilliant at what they do that don't get a light shone on them as much as they should. And I guess I guess the route from sketch is to write scripts and stuff like that. I guess that's the natural route. But I just feel like, having grown up in the 90s where it was like probably a golden era, really. I don't know how much of it would stand up now, but yeah, to go from Harry Enfield when I was like 10 into the Fast Show, into the Simon Pegg one. What was that? God, you tell I'm 44.
Big Train.
Yeah, Big Train. Yeah, into Big Train. Like it really was it was a staple. Like there was always something that felt like it was pushing, and even like Rob Newman's stuff, where that was the first time I sort of Simon Munnery stuff. So like that was the first time I sort of got turned on to alternative comedy, was seeing Rob Newman's bits in sort of Newman and Baddiel, but also Simon Munnery's BBC Two, I imagine it was, show Attention Scum, where he really had a license to just go wherever the hell he wanted. And is there much risk taking at the moment? I don't know. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, and maybe I'm just not. But where are these people being allowed to showcase their voices, really? But
yeah, I think you're totally right. Or it's gone underground on the internet, or it's directly on TikTok. Or I said TikTok like a granddad there, but what the
TikTok
kids are looking at. But you segue very nicely into talking about 90s TV there. So I think it'd be nice to bring it round to some X-Files chat now. Thank you for watching the pilot.
Yes.
What was that like, revisiting that? And were you a big X-Files fan at the time?
I loved the X-Files. I can remember like absolute key episodes, like that guy in the air vents and stuff, that was just mind-blowing. And I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time it was just this incredible thing. And yeah, I loved rewatching it as well. I thought, obviously you're watching something that it does feel like a pilot, and it does feel like maybe at points they hadn't really found out what this thing is yet, which is kind of an obvious thing to say. But I was straight back in.
You get the silent X-Files title card because we're not party to the fabulous intro quite yet, and then a card comes up that says inspired by actual documented events, and then we're straight into this murky world of this woods and a young woman running through the woods, where she's running from, what she's running to. There's a rustling in the trees, and then you see this bright light. Things start to get very windy. She falls to the floor, and this kind of odd shadowy figure with a bleary face comes up in the bright light. Where's she gone? We're in the realms of the supernatural, and then you're into sort of police procedural then, and I think that's coming off the back of something like Silence of the Lambs, and melding that with, I think one of the showrunners on this described it as Silence of the Lambs meets Close Encounters, and that's the kind of line it's sort of treading there. And then the bodies of this girl's being looked at by the police detectives. They find some unusual markings on her back, and then it cuts straight to us being introduced to Dana Scully at FBI headquarters. In she comes, and then it just very quickly sets up the whole premise. She's a medical doctor. She joined the FBI because she wanted a challenge, and then the board of 3 white men, one smoking in the corner. She's going to be sent off to report in on this brilliant but unconventional FBI character called Mulder, who is known to everybody as Spooky Mulder because, yes, he's one of the best analysts on the FBI, but also he's got a thing for these X-Files, which are unexplained phenomenon. So she's there, and she said herself, "Am I there to debunk this?"
Yeah, it's the most on the nose line. Like that line is like sets up the whole thing of like when I assume you want me to debunk it, and it's like, right, you've just set up however many series there are. You've just played on that one line for the next 10 years or whatever it was.
That's it, and it's like 11 seasons of. I think Chris Carter went into it saying that he deliberately wanted to swap those gender roles because stereotypically it'd be the male figure who's the kind of skeptic, and the female figure who's the believer. But they do well in this episode. I'm like continually surprised by how quickly the episodes move, because they've got to get so much in, and then when you get to an episode like Tombs, episode 3, and that's sort of bang, 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 really thrilling. And I find the Monster of the Week stuff a bit more satisfying on a genre level than the legacy stuff of the aliens. But it's and obviously one of the first shows to really go to town on computer imagery as well, because that's you've got that whole special effect at the beginning with the bright light and the blurry face as well. So that's it is thrilling to watch it, and I am watching it through the lens of how badly has this aged.
Well, it felt like, I only watched the one episode, but it felt like an incredibly good concept for a show. And I think that's what stands the test of time. Is like, I was like, yeah, this is I know exactly what this is. The other thing I loved was, for about the first 20 minutes of the episode, they had Mulder eating nuts and like spitting them out like just around a crime scene. And it was like, I reckon it must have been this sort of affectation they were going to give to Mulder, and then they just dropped.
Right.
Like, I don't know whether it's coffee beans or what, but he keeps putting something in his mouth and then spitting them out. And like he stood on like exhuming a grave, like, just spitting out. And you're just like, this doesn't seem like FBI procedure. But,
it's like, how do we convey this guy is a little bit quirky, a little bit like he's seen it all, he's done it all. Yeah, he's just chomping down on a couple of cashews.
That was a nice thing to see in Ep1.
What I don't think has aged very well, I don't think it went down well at the time, because I know Gillian Anderson wasn't too keen on the idea anyway, is sort of forcing Scully to go into Mulder's motel room in a bikini, essentially. And that felt particularly gratuitous to show him off these marks that she's got on her back, which may or may not have come from an alien invasion.
I mean, it was definitely of its time. Like that would have been tame for the 90s, I think. But
Yeah, but like she could have had that on her shoulder. And then I was reading into it, and it's like apparently Chris Carter, the showrunner, said, "Well, that needed to be in there because it showed the sort of platonic relationship between these two leads. They were just jumping in bed together."
but we all enjoyed it, Chris. Good, clean fun. I was just going to say, I'd say I'm hooked in that I definitely want to carry on.
Oh, great! I think it's 218 episodes, and then there's the films. So there's a lot of newer stuff. I didn't realize it was still going on until like, it's come back quite recently actually, because Rhys Darby's in it.
It relaunched, didn't it?
Yeah, I totally missed that. And there's all the stuff with the Black Ooze, and then that Krychek character, and all this stuff which just went into kind of popular culture that ingrained itself in popular culture. That you go, wow, But yeah, it's going to be. It's a long journey, and you should come back. Is what I should say.
Oh yeah.
When we've gone on this journey together, and I hope all the guests kind of do watch a bit of it and get something from it.
Oh yeah.
Believe Me is written and edited by me, Chris Boyd, with production support from Steve Marshall. The music is by Johnny Boyle, and our logo is by Russ Brown. See you out there next time.